Here. We're going to start off with some introductions. Tracy, I'll let you kick that off.
I'm Tracy. I am with Cloudflare. I am over there as sales leadership development, most recently head of commercial mid-market, and I led the Aircover implementation at Copper.
And I'm Andrew Levy. I'm a repeat entrepreneur. I've started, scaled, exited enterprise software companies in the past. Sold my last company to VMware in 2017. At the time, I really wished I had a way that I could enable the field on every call. We kind of struggled to train, coach, to get them to adopt the content we were putting out. And then ended up starting Aircover with my co-founders in 2020, June of 2021. So in terms of the agenda today, we're going to make this fast. We only have 20 minutes, but we're going to go through what the current state of the market's like, what is net new with AI that's been unlocked. Tracy's going to tell you about her journey at Cloudflare. We'll talk about just-in-time enablement, and then we'll kind of wrap up with how organizations are changing in this new environment. All right, so if you take the typical sales funnel, it's kind of an interesting exercise to overlay, what are various tools in this funnel doing in terms of AI investments, right? So, I started to see a pattern emerge as I put this together, right? If you start at the top of the funnel here, you hear a lot about Gen AI being used to, create email, to, essentially reach out to your prospects at scale. There's this idea of talking to your data or virtualizing an SDR and talking to them. Let's see what this looks like as we continue to go down the funnel, right? We get to revenue insights. Okay, you can talk to your data. And what I mean by that is, putting a natural language layer on top of the information that, normally would be presented as charts and graphs and insights, but instead you can ask good questions, right? So that's great. Now you can probably start to see a pattern emerging here, right? You get to proposal and pricing, you get to, some of your customer success tools. And really what we've seen a lot of that's come out in the market is, the existing tools with giving you a nicer interface or letting you generate content. What we're going to be talking about today is not that. What I think is an interesting thought experiment, an interesting exercise, how you can differentiate your organization by leveraging what is a net new unlock with AI. What wasn't possible a few years ago, right? And this idea, and one example of that is this idea of being able to take conversation as it's happening in real time and analyze it and actually be able to surface content related to what is being talked about. And when I say content, that could be helping your reps do better discovery. It could be helping them answer questions. It could be doing something like the pattern matching around, hey, we just heard a pain point, maybe you should go down this sales motion or answer a competitive question. And it is a unique moment in time, for a lot of the reasons we have our LLM advancements, we have compute that enables us to do this. But rather than hear it from me, we have Tracy here who has, implemented this technology and can share her experience.
Thank you. So I'm with Cloudflare, and we recently implemented Aircover after piloting it for a while. I have to give them kudos for bearing with us. We're a cybersecurity company, so our Vincent process is pretty intense, very intense. Anyway, I was over our commercial mid-market group at the time. We have been working with Aircover for almost 2.5 years at this point. A large part of that is our Vincent process, but in that time, we also piloted the product. We are right now a $1 billion company. We're trying to grow to about $5 billion over the next 4 years. And if you know anything about Cloudflare, we have one of the largest networks out there. About 25-30% of the traffic on the internet goes through some kind of Cloudflare presence. So over 209 billion threats blocked every day. 30% of the Fortune 1000 are paying us as customers. 95% of our population is literally within 50 milliseconds of one of our data centers. So a lot going on, a lot of customers. And Cloudflare has a huge portfolio of solutions. There are over 30 different things. They're all really complex. The portfolios change very quickly. We have a very rapid deployment cycle, very rapid product development cycle. So it's difficult for our AEs, our solution engineers, our sales specialists to balance the technical knowledge with how you sell to value. And we wanted our teams to focus on selling the value and not having to memorize all this feeds and speeds, the widgets, etc. So that was actually one of the reasons we started talking to Aircover. We really wanted them focused on value selling. We also wanted to bring our ramp time down. If any of you are with very technical companies, you know the ramp time can be pretty long. There's a lot to learn. They're not as productive in that first year as we'd like them to be. And then we have a very competitive landscape, lots of different companies out there in the cybersecurity space. And our managers are stretched pretty thin, as well as being homegrown for the most part and still learning their own roles. So, and I'm going to say this for those of you who are thinking about implementing a tool like this. If you have a coaching problem, Aircover is not going to solve your coaching problem. It's going to give you a tool in your basket to help you solve that. But when you implement a tool like this, you need to be able to teach your teams how to coach using a tool like this. It's not something that you can do in a vacuum. You really do have to think about how you're going to roll that out with the leaders who are going to be managing this team day to day and reviewing this material. Anyway, so he mentioned just-in-time enablement. We have used a variety of vendors, some of them here, that we no longer use, and we now surface content through Aircover. We are also going to be integrating it with Clue and with a couple other different tools within our system, but we surface content through Aircover. It allows AEs or sales specialists, whoever, to continue talking, having their conversation. And as they're talking, when a subject is mentioned that's in one of the cards that we've loaded, that card loads in the window that only that person can see. No one else can see it. So if a competitor's name comes up, that competitor's battle card shows up in that window. If they want to search for something, they can. But for the most part, it's auto-generated. They don't have to do anything. And after the meeting is over, they basically get a really nice summary. They get the action steps bulleted out. They get timestamps, details of the meeting. They can forward that to their account team, or it auto shares depending on what your settings are. We automatically share to the account team. And it has really changed how we do business in the particular groups that we've rolled it out with. We started with mid-market and our sales specialists, and next up are our BDRs, ISR teams, and then we'll be moving on to customer success. They're in a pilot now. But for the teams, I'm getting ahead of the rollout here, I hope it. But for the team that we piloted with in mid-market, it was a 3.5x increase in revenue. For the first time in a year and a half, that particular team hit their product, their LOB target. That was the first ever for them. The rep efficiency gain the last month was $2 million, and in-meeting card views were over 5,000 in that first month. So you can see it was pretty dramatic what the change was. And for the groups that have enabled on Aircover, these results have been sustained over the time that they've been on the solution. We piloted last year and we officially launched with a contract in December. So in short, we were looking for a way to basically double what we did with our sales teams. But at the end of the day, we want 10x what they're producing today, because that will help us get to that $5 billion mark sooner. And short, I would say this has been a resounding success for us. There are some definite best practices that I would say you need to think about when you implement. Again, have a coaching strategy with this. Think about what solutions you want to lead with. first. If you have a new solution or you have something that's really complex, or maybe you're implementing a new sales methodology, those are perfect things to start with. I would not start with the things that everybody knows. I would also make sure that the rest of your company, the rest of your org knows what you're doing, because the first time it appears on a meeting, it can be a surprise to them. But for us, this has been a resounding success so far. We had a waiting list of about 180 people who want the solution internally, most of them enterprise salespeople, which was a surprise to us. But we'll be implementing them last because originally they said they didn't want it. Now, basically, that's reversed. They all want it. So I will give it back to him, but if you have questions, feel free to ask.
Yeah. Thanks, Tracy. Well, we're going to leave time at the end for Q&A, so we'll definitely can go through that. Yeah, I think one thing that's interesting, listening to Tracy's story is that, a lot of teams will invest a ton of money in training, getting them in the classroom, enabling the field on, especially if you're launching a new product in a new space. But the question is, what comes next? How do you reinforce that training at scale, right? And it's kind of that old adage, you need to read something like 4 to 7 times to internalize it, right? So if you're showing them that material, it shouldn't be the first time they've seen that ever, right? They may have seen it 3, 6, 9 months ago in a training session, but it's that repeatability that's going to drive consistency in your messaging, positioning that's so hard to get otherwise. All right, so we often get this question of, okay, how is the sales organization going to change as a result of applying AI? And it's an interesting thought experiment. I think some companies are in this camp of, we're going to replace reps with AI. As you can tell, we're more in the camp of, we want to create the 10x salesperson or the 10x customer success manager. When you think about how the organization might change, the roles will shift. For example, imagine you could build the entirety of your company's knowledge, their domain expertise into every call. You may not be stretched as thin on sales engineering resources. In fact, those resources can be directed towards, say, your higher value, more strategic accounts. Maybe some of those resources will shift to post-sales, more delivery or professional services. But at the end of the day, what technology like this will enable your field to do is be more productive. So they'll be able to sell more products and services more effectively. So rather than thinking about how maybe you can reduce headcount, maybe you can actually sell more, right? That's the whole idea here. It's kind of that, if any of you have ever heard stories about data center build-outs and companies being worried about the compute being used, inevitably, it's the same as when you build a bigger highway. You get more cars in the road, not that you get less traffic. So similarly, we can think about that analogy here where your team could do more. All right, so that's what we have. We wanted to leave time for questions. So we'd love to, I'd be happy to answer some from the audience here, and I'll repeat it because there's no other mic, but I can walk over.
So how are you customizing content or what's displayed to the reps across segments?
Are we customizing the content that we use across segments? So inside Aircover, you have the ability to set up different teams, and you can choose for the content to show for just that team or throughout the entire board or to multiple teams. The teams can also upload their own content in addition to yours. It's up to you, I think, whether you want to put a governor on that or how much you want to regulate that so that you don't have unencrypted content going out. But we have, for the most part, loaded the content for them. There's a couple of teams that we allow to upload their own content, but it's actually pretty straightforward. You get, they have edit access for the people who will be providing the content. And then there's some integrations that you can also have.
Using this idea of a playbook. So you can have your SDR playbook, your inside sales playbook, your customer success playbook. Even if they're on the same call, those folks may actually be seeing different content depending on their role with the organization.
Yeah, our solution engineers see much more technical content than our AEs do. Our sales specialists are kind of the in-between type of content, but it's different. It's a different view for everybody.
Yeah, the question was, is there a self-learning capability? What happens after many calls? So today we do have data on what content is driving what outcomes, which is typically very difficult to get. And that data is also synced back to Salesforce, which allows you to connect those dots around pipeline progression, what is leading to, say, close won, close lost. We are working on some additional capabilities to, pick up on patterns across what is being spoken around on calls and feeding that back into the cards that you see. But yeah, today, just kind of a big first step gap within a lot of orgs is, what messaging is driving those results.
I will say our product marketing team has been all over this, and they're actually the ones driving most of the content. And the reporting gives you an idea of which cards are coming up the most, which objections are coming up the most. It aligns to the close won opportunities or the close loss opportunities. So you can see when do we win, depending on the content that came up. I think that's probably the most helpful reporting. And then you can also see where the hot spots are in the board, where people are struggling a bit more with a particular objection. And that's been really good to see.
And actually, you just reminded me to mention one thing, which is that this is also done in a very privacy-friendly way. This is all transcription-based. There's actually no audio or video that's saved as a result of this process. And so I think that's also, working with Cloudflare, being in the cybersecurity space, very sensitive about PII, data security, privacy. So it's something that we take seriously. I think, customers would appreciate that. All right, any other questions? That's a great question. So the question was, how much stock content is built in, depending on selling methodologies or queues? And actually, when we onboard a customer, there's literally a drop down that says, "Hey, I'm a MedPick shop or Bands or Spice," and you can pick your sales methodology. And we will generate content off of that, so you don't start from a blank slate. And then you can, of course, import your own. We can summarize it. Yeah, we help you get started.
I think what is also helpful during the implementation is they'll give you some guidelines on what might be good to start with. New products in particular for us were a way to go, but they'll give you some guidelines.
All right, anything else?
No more questions?
All right, thanks everyone. And it's been a pleasure.